What's up? What's up? I'm Dr. Omatma, host of Egg Meets Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meets Sperm. And I'm so excited to introduce you to today's guest. His name is Barton Scott, and he is a biochemist and founder. Barton is also a nutritionist and a researcher. And for the last 6 years, Barton has been the founder and process developer behind Upgradedformulas. Barton is passionate about helping people address the stressors of daily life, poor sleep, hormone issues, and low energy. I am excited to talk to Barton because Upgradedformulas is a really cool company that is changing the way that we use minerals and how well they're absorbed into our bodies. So, hi, welcome, Barton. Good to have you here.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for that intro.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about, first of all, you're a biochemist, researcher. How did you get into supplements?
Yeah, that happened a while ago. It's because I was an athlete. I competed at a really high level in wrestling. And then I did other sports too, like played both ways in football and things. But it's really wrestling that where you're having to watch your weight and you can't eat just anything and you need to be able to perform at a high level. I quite literally, I think I surprised a lot of people around me because I was like 12 and competing and supplementing, just different things. I probably put myself on a multivitamin at like 10. So by the time I was 22 and things started to go wrong for myself, for my mom, I had a lot of knowledge. I had about a decade's worth of supplementing. And that was still early days of nutrition, of supplements, of this idea of you could eat something. Like in the 90s, if you told someone that you ate something and then you didn't feel like you had that much energy or mental clarity, most people would go, I don't really understand what you're talking about. Like, how could that be?
It probably isn't the food that you just ate. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, it has, it's just nothing. So like, why would that be connected or how is that connected? And I just was always very intuitive with that sort of thing. And it made a lot of sense. And then I started to have some pretty frustrating levels and then later overwhelming levels of brain fog. And I was helping my mother with some chronic conditions she had. She had a lot of inflammation, and that led to drugs getting prescribed, no questions about diet being asked whatsoever. And, she was living the American dream, really. She had retired from being a librarian and English teacher and was, both my parents were very happy together, and her health just started to slip a little bit. And she went in and got put on certain medication that eventually led to surgery. And because, it wasn't fixing the root cause. And then the body was having to detox the toxic medication. And then they're like, all right, well, let's remove the thymus gland. Let's take some things out. And all the while, it was like, this is just not a good idea, and was able to help her make a lot of progress. And in the process so I was motivated from multiple different directions. And I ultimately realized that I wasn't, and she wasn't absorbing the nutrients that we're taking, or we're missing a lot, even of things we're supplementing. So if you imagine testing and seeing results, in this case, it was hair, and having this amazing consultation with this guy that's now retired and seeing, wait a minute, I'm taking these things and I'm still low in them. And I've been taking them for a year and a half. This is frustrating, concerning, and scary, really, because what you're telling me is my symptoms are linked to these deficiencies. So I'm having these sets of issues and it's linked to magnesium, manganese, chromium. And I'm taking a lot of these things. And yeah, it was a very challenging time for sure. It was incredibly challenging. And I ultimately remember waking up after researching and learning a lot about, well, why aren't we absorbing it? How can this be easier? What can I understand and utilize from chemical engineering to put towards here? And yeah, so I ultimately went into business and created a process addition on the actual manufacturing side to get minerals to absorb better. So that our process was digesting the minerals for you, essentially, so that your body could do a lot less work and you could absorb them without having to go through the full digestive process.
So you said something interesting for me that I feel like still to this day, a lot of people have questions around.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we get all of the nutrients that we need from the food we eat? And why are they not absorbing? What are, like, in your experience, what did you come up with as those answers?
Well, the first one is a two-part thing where the food that you're eating doesn't have the amount of nutrients it used to have in it. It has about 40% less than the last 60 to 80 years. And so that's nearly half. And you needed those nutrients. And maybe even that wouldn't have been enough. We don't know. But what I can tell you is that you're not getting enough nutrients, even if you're eating a good diet, plain and simple. And it's because the soil doesn't have the nutrients to give the food. And we can go into a lot of reasons why that is, but that's certainly a thing. Then air quality, water quality, things are a lot more toxic, roughly 1,000 times more toxic than any other time in recorded history. And that means that the body is having to defend against all these antagonizing forces. And the way it does that is with things like minerals. Minerals are defenders against heavy metals from an electromagnetic standpoint. And they also push out heavy metals once you have enough in the body. So zinc will help you push out mercury. Selenium will help you push out mercury, things like that. So yeah, it's really important to understand that even the food that is organic and brightly colored and beautiful, and it still may have a fraction. It likely has something like 40% less than what it did 80 years ago. In our lifetime, our grandparents' lifetime, a lot has changed, and it's not getting better. And so that leads me to, we need to test and first understand what we're missing. And that's something that we do, and it's a big part of what we do.
So you said in the last 80 years is where you've seen this like decline in nutrients coming to us from our soil, our food, and all of that. What's interesting is very parallel, and I don't know if I made this connection sooner, parallel to that, in the last 80 years, we've also seen a massive decline in sperm count, motility, and morphology, to the point where clinicians and like the general database has changed what we consider to be average or normal for male fertility. So what used to be 80 years ago, we used to say, oh, 120 million sperm is a really good thing, minimum. Now that minimum is 20 million. So we've massively shifted what we expect, because essentially, like, there's this massive drop off that has been happening for the last 80 years. So I have never like made that connection, but you're like, there might be something to this. And I think our conversation today is probably going to make a really good case for why that is, because like sperm are so dependent on minerals and the right like absorption and utilization of those minerals to create good quality sperm.
Very, very true. So this is really key for hormones of all types. I really want people to understand that. And those are some great points. 120 million down to 20 million, because a lot of people, talk about fertility and they focus solely on the female side of things. But something we've talked about offline is Well, there are minerals that, and it seems like I personally haven't heard anyone actually say this, but something I've discovered, through research is that there's certain minerals that influence sperm quality and just total numbers, and also have other benefits for men. And when a guy is also hormone balanced, both men and women, when we're hormone balanced, we make better decisions. We're better to be around. We enjoy life more. Some pretty important things. We do better at work. And then that just compounds one way or another, either negatively compounds or positively compounds. And because of that, 5 years from now, if you don't do anything, then you'll be in the negative compounding side of things. If you take action now, then you'll start to move the needle and be in a much different place, even in 3 weeks, in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year. It's very important.
Yeah. So let's break down, like, what are the key minerals that, in your experience, are essential for female hormones and that kind of thing? And then on the male side, hormones as well as sperm.
Sure. On the female side, certainly, it's funny, I'm actually designing a protocol right now for each phase of a woman's cycle, and we'll have that on our site soon, as well as a fasting bundle, which kind of goes hand in hand with what do you need at different times of, depending on male or female, what you're doing, if you're eating regularly, if you're giving your digestive system a break and things. For women, copper is important. Zinc is also important. So zinc is progesterone and testosterone, which, a lot of people think of testosterone as being a male hormone, but even women have, although men have much more testosterone than women, right? I think a lot of people know that, but I think a lot of people don't know that even, like a healthy woman will have 10 times more testosterone than estrogen. And we think of a woman as having just a tremendous amount of estrogen and a little bit of testosterone. So zinc then is very important, but you're not necessarily covered if you're just taking zinc, or especially if you're taking a lot and you're not testing. A great story on that is I had a friend who was just hyper supplementing zinc during COVID. And why? Well, someone, a long time ago figured out that zinc was antiviral. Fantastic. Because, the Germ-X and everything we've seen for the past couple of years is just, it's a warm blanket. It doesn't do any good. It's antibacterial, right? It's not antiviral. So, but what's interesting is that copper is antibacterial. And when you displace all your copper by taking too much zinc, if you're not testing, that's why we have a hair test at Upgraded Formulas. And I think it's just important to look at things from a ratio standpoint instead of just this number is this and it should be this. It's like, it's not a fuel gauge on a car where it's empty or full. It's how does this thing relate to this other thing? And I don't hear very many people really get that concept. And it's crucial because if you're going to understand any sort of group theory sort of thing, you can't just understand one individual in the group, right? So we're both part of this group mindshare, right? If you understood just one person in the group, you wouldn't have a great feel for the overall interaction feel of the group, what the dynamic is, things like that. And on a molecular level, things work that way too. And
hormones work that way too.
Hormones, hormones.
So many fine balances and like checks and balances essentially through our entire body. So when people are like, oh, I need to take progesterone, it's like, oh my God, like, stop. What are you talking about?
Right.
So really, like, this fine-tuned balance exists on so many different levels in our body. And things are constantly reacting and responding to the release of something else in some other part of the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. You asked on the men's side, the really, and magnesium is also important for women. Magnesium and zinc, really, for really good sperm quality. And we will soon have a product that is focused like for women and for men, actually. So that's like a breaking news. We didn't even have a chance to talk about that yet, but yeah, that'll be out in, I don't know, another month or so.
Okay.
Maybe by the time this airs. So,
What are some symptoms that people can look for in their
mhm,
own bodies, in their life, that
mhm,
might be little blinking lights of some sort of mineral deficiency or imbalance?
sure. If you, particularly as a, well, either man or woman, if you feel really creative, but you feel like your follow through is low, you may either have a high copper or you may have hidden copper toxicity, which is lends itself to creativity, but ungrounded creativity. So low follow through. Zinc helps you balance that. It helps you be more analytical. On the other side, if you're too analytical, you'll notice that it's hard to connect with people emotionally. You're just all about the numbers, all about the just drive, 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 go, go, go. That person would do well with at least some amount of copper added into their diet through supplementation as well, likely. And that does influence personality, which is amazing. You quite literally start to build a different person and maybe save a relationship or many in the process. So,
Fascinating. I'm like, should I be testing myself and my husband?
yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, nutrition really does become personality, and it's all about what we're actually absorbing, right? So it's very key. If you have someone that's like very angry all the time, there's two things that could be happening there. They're influencing hormone cascades, and that's iron, too much iron, or really low certain B vitamins like B1, B2, B3. And they'll just be like gloomy, And if that's you as you listen to this, then these are some things you want to be doing. And then vitamin D can be connected to all of this too. But the problem with vitamin D is that people take vitamin D, they don't necessarily take K2. Even if they do take K2, there's a overabsorption of calcium that happens in relationship, again, in relationship to magnesium. So when you think about what that means the thyroid function is going to be low because one of the markers, we look at potassium and calcium as one of the markers of thyroid function. That ratio is really important to understand. And you want to be within a certain range. And if you can bring that calcium down and yet somehow get your vitamin D levels up to where they want to be, then the thyroid is going to be a lot happier. There is a lot. And so on a hormone note, making adequate thyroid hormone and having the thyroid really work well is a key part, right? To living well, thinking well, having a good metabolism, good mood, certainly, hair, skin, nails, all of that. And that's really only possible if you also have, going back to zinc and copper, as well as iodine, as well as selenium and magnesium. Magnesium is going to stimulate the pituitary gland to signal correctly with the thyroid. There's a lot going on for sure inside our bodies. And it's really amazing that we're just alive at all, frankly. I just marvel at it all the time. Just the abuse and the lack of understanding is out there. It's just, wow. Like either that or we're just like meant to live to 900 and we're just failing at it so badly, that we live to 90. So, so yeah, it's just interesting. I don't know how many of these things a person can really incorporate without testing. So that's always where my mind comes back to is like, these are great overall things to understand, but what do you need right now? And that knowing that will be different 90 days from now, particularly if you're supplementing with supplements that really absorb well, which is, something I feel like we've really figured out well because we can improve deep sleep tremendously for people, even if they're already taking another magnesium supplement. And it's not for us, for any of our products, I'll just say, I know people have been taught, maybe even indoctrinated a certain way, a certain thinking about forms, like this form of magnesium or that one, like you need this one to sleep and this one to cross the blood-brain barrier. That's not how the body does. I'm not saying that's not true, but what I am saying is with food, your body doesn't look at grapes that you eat or steak or anything that's going to have some magnesium in it and go, sorry, I can't use that for any part of the brain. It's like the body figures out how to use it, how to utilize it. So that, really is a similar approach to what we do with all of our supplements. We get them into a particle size form that they can get distributed through the body without digestion. And then you can test with the test, one of ours or some others, and really prove before and after, hey, getting absorption. At the same time, you should be getting symptom alleviation. So there's a lot to it, and it's amazing. I'm super, super happy to be able to help people with this now because it's exactly what I needed 10 years ago. So.
Yeah, awesome. So you've mentioned testing, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on the varieties of testing that are available. So obviously, like hair mineral analysis is one possibility. There are some functional labs that do blood tests of minerals and vitamins. And then there's like the very conventional blood test that you get at a doctor's office that says they test B12 and magnesium and zinc. And I'm curious, like, what you've seen the main differences are in terms of like accuracy and usability and how it transfers to real clinical wisdom. Like how to take those results and integrate them into some sort of strategy or plan to help support people.
Got it. Yeah. That is why I loved the hair analysis, is because of how actionable it was. You get to see this whole, what I will say, the problem with blood is, and don't get me wrong, I think it's important to pull, a comprehensive thyroid panel, once or twice a year at least. At least once, but twice is probably better. And if you could do it quarterly, that'd be really good too. But we look at thyroid function through hair, and I can always tell if it's low there, it's going to be low on the test too. So it's one thing I find is that people get overwhelmed with testing. So this concept called Occam's razor, which is the simplest idea, is often the best. If you can get a lot of data from doing one thing, and you get people to do that one thing really, really well, that repetition is going to go for over a 10-year period, for example. It's going to serve them a lot better than if they sort of danced around for a year and a half with a bunch of different tests, and then we're kind of distracted in the process instead of like repetition. I'm just working at this area until I'm getting it right and getting it right, getting it right. Minerals are going to influence everything for sure. There are some functional medicine tests out there that I feel like I do a really good job. Like I like GI map, for example. Yeah, the oat tests, those are good. There are some other tests that are really valuable. But with those, just like with this, you really need a consultation with someone that really understands what they're talking about, and they have a real expertise in this area. So someone that has an expertise in one of them won't necessarily have an expertise in the other. I mean, in fact, it's likely they won't, because they're both pretty dense. They're all three pretty dense bodies of knowledge. And there's just not a lot of like, oh, well, I get it because I get this other test and I have a lot of experience in this field. No. It's like, how many of these have you done? Have you done 1,000? Have you done 1,000 analyses? If not, like, I'm going somewhere else. That sort of thing. Like, really, I think people really should ask the practitioners more questions. Like, hey, you new to this? That's okay. But let me know you're new to this. You think this is important? Okay. Based on what? Like, I like this question a lot. And ultimately, you want to get this big expanded view of what is connected. So to really answer your question, I like that in a lot of functional medicine tests, we have improved ranges. So from an actionability standpoint, we're not just saying, oh, you're within range. Yay. Mm-hmm. Go back home, celebrate with some terrible food that you just like. And no, we want action. Like, if you're doing this work to optimize or improve your health or just not be sick, then you clearly want to take action if you've done the work to do a test of any kind, right? So hearing that you're, quote, within the normal range is not ever something that I want to hear if I'm looking to improve. So that's one thought. So I like the improved ranges on functional medicine tests, including, and the hair test being one of them. It's full of that. It's based on a healthy population. they worked with collegiate and Olympic athletes to develop those ranges versus a normal thyroid panel, for example, is based on a sick population that came in, right? You probably know this. And it blows my mind that they're like, well, these were just the people that came to saw us, that came to see us. So this is where we grabbed our data from. And it was like unhealthy 65-year-olds.
Right. And same for sperm and same for hormones. It's like what's considered normal in our conventional world is very much based on the people they see. And most of the time, you're going to a doctor if you don't feel super well.
Yeah, exactly.
So
The least healthy you've ever been probably is like you at your rock bottom. They're like, cool, this is the average.
Right. Absolutely. And we see this thyroid is probably the biggest place where even today, like people are told, oh, your thyroid is normal, yet hair's falling out, skin is dry as heck, periods are out of whack, like so many symptoms that point to subclinical hypothyroid, yet these people are not being paid attention to and looked at as like, hey, is this good for this person? Let's not even generalize and say like, let's get you to a place where your body feels good. And this stuff is not in your head. It's not made up. It's like legitimate things that are happening that need attention.
Really well said on that. There's a lot to think about, but the one last thing I'd like to add there with blood to that question is remembering that blood is us on our best behavior is really important. It is that it's truly the source in the body that looks like you at your healthiest and most optimal. So it is certainly true when you understand that, the body will pull nutrients from both your tissues and your bone marrow. So hair is tissue, skin is tissue. It will pull nutrients from those areas and incorporate it into the blood so the blood can be really nutrient rich. And then if we put our dipstick in there and we test that blood, then that's just not going to be the first place that we notice. And I'm always interested about, I want to know as soon as possible so I can make changes, just as you would, running a company, just as you would steering a ship that takes a long time to turn. You need to know soon. Otherwise, like a mile from now, like you might be in a direction you don't want to be in. So that's really important to think about when you really imagine the blood coursing through your veins, and it's very nutrient rich, but there may or may not be places that it's pulled from that if you could sample those areas, they would let you know, hey, you're low in magnesium, manganese, selenium, chromium, sodium, just any number of things, right? And you're also high in aluminum, cadmium, mercury, arsenic, and lead. And these heavy metals are both entering your body more easily and staying there. They're being able to activate certain enzymatic pathways to a lesser extent than the minerals, but to some extent. And then that's, in the case of bone, making your bones much more brittle than they would be otherwise if you have cadmium in there when you should have something else. So it's just something to be really aware of. So I firmly believe that understanding those sort of concepts, that's just very important to understand when you think about longevity as well as performance. And when you think about it from this, with all that understanding, you start to really realize that you can spot symptoms much earlier. I think for like years, maybe even a decade sooner, when you're looking at something like hair, instead of looking at like a traditional just blood panel. It's just not likely to, by the time you have a deficiency in blood, you could have found it much sooner. I'll just say that.
Awesome. Is there any pearls of wisdom that you would share for couples that are struggling with fertility who are kind of not totally sure if their minerals are out of balance? And obviously testing is important. Working with a skilled practitioner is super important. But any pearls of wisdom that you have for our listeners?
Sure. One pearl of wisdom would be optimize your sleep, no matter where you feel like you are. Track your sleep at least most nights of the week. Even if you don't wear a tracker or any biometric thing of any sort the rest of the day, put it on before you go to bed so that you know your baseline deep sleep. Deep sleep is a lead domino. Dr. Sachin Patel and I were talking about this yesterday. And when he works with a lot of doctors, this is one of the things they look at. And I said, oh, interesting. Me too. This is the thing I tell people to look at on their Oura Ring or anything else they're using is what's your baseline deep sleep and how do you improve it? And if you can just get that down, that's huge. So the tip there is upgraded magnesium. I would recommend something else if I saw anything improve deep sleep more, and it hasn't. We've had people go from 15 minutes of deep sleep to 2 hours in 5 nights just by doing that, much less our overall protocol. So when you start to get a lot more deep sleep, that's the phase of the type of sleep that really helps your body and brain truly recover and heal and fend off chronic disease and inflammation.
Yep, absolutely. For those of you that listen to this podcast regularly, you have heard me talk about deep sleep and sleep in general, as well as like every single guest that I've had on here talks about sleep because it is like as clinicians and educators, we know the importance of sleep and we understand like how much this is impacting so many other pathways in our body. So we're not kidding here. Like sleep is vital to how well our body's going to be able to function on so many different levels. So thank you for also sharing that wisdom and sharing that message.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining us, Barton, today. And I am excited for everything that you're doing in the world and all the amazing impact that you're having. Where can people find you? And then can you share the amazing gift that we have for our listeners?
Yeah, certainly. So people can find us at upgradedformulas.com. That's upgraded with an ED and formulas with an S. So upgradedformulas.com, our YouTube channel. If you're just exhausted at the end of the day and you're just sitting on the couch with your dog or cat and you're like, oh man, I want to learn something, but I'm too tired to read, our YouTube channel, search Upgraded Formulas for that. And then on Instagram, Upgraded Formulas, and I'm at Ask Barton, Barton.
Awesome. And I know we have a discount code for our listeners that would like to get started with using some of the minerals that y'all create. Mm-hmm. Can you share what that is?
Sure. Yeah, for 15% off, just because I can, on everything on your entire first purchase, anything. We have everything from supplements to hair testing to consultations to a course, even if you're a practitioner or super interested in this area. And that is the word fertility at checkout for 15% off.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I know that people listening are going to love that. And for those of you that are not sure where to start or what to do, you might check out the testing. You might start with some magnesium. That was really amazing. I tried that one. So yeah, this is awesome. I hope you all got amazing things out of this chat today and tune in for the rest of the tips coming up soon. Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.